We've got 38 people in the meeting so far, which is fantastic. And we're expecting at least another 20 to 30 more people, assuming a couple of people won't make it tonight. But we've got at least 70 people registered for tonight. So people will be rolling in, but it's 7:06. So how about we get started? I would like to open the meeting by first acknowledging that we're meeting on unceded Aboriginal land. I'm on Dharawal country, as I'm sure quite a few of you are too. And I want to pay my deepest respect to Dharawal, Yuin and Wadi Wadi elders, past and present, and extend those respects to all Aboriginal people here tonight. As I invited you to do, those of you that came a little bit earlier, please let us know in the chat where you're joining the meeting from. Traditional owners have said that South 32 is doing with the Dendrobium mine what they're doing fails the human test. They've taught us that cultural significance is not reducible to particular sites and artifacts, but is relational. It's about access to country and for country to be healthy, thriving and well. Government systems try to reduce complex ecologies to measurable, quantifiable units, and we would do well to all learn from traditional owners to understand the catchment as a life-giving ecosystem. As we get into the detail of the Dendrobium expansion plans tonight and address the more immediate questions we confront in resisting all mining in our water catchment, we recognise the successful custodianship of First Nations peoples over the upland swamps, the escarpment, the creeks, the seas, for thousands upon thousands of years. And I think I speak for everyone here in expressing my deepest sorrow and anger that in such a short time, the colony has turned the balance upside down. But it's really important to hold present that at every step of the way, people have fought for country, and that also means fighting for each other. And we'll continue to do that. We're facing a new fight with Dendrobium, and tonight we've got a few excellent speakers to give you all the lowdown, the scoop on the latest proposal. As I introduce tonight a little bit more, I want to invite you all to type in the chat why you're here tonight and what you want out of this meeting. Give us a bit of input into what's drawn you to this meeting tonight, and give us a little hello vibe. Tell us how you're going, how's your day been? So to kick us off tonight, Kay is going to give us the lowdown on South 32's revised plans for Dendrobium. Kay probably needs no introduction to many of you. She has advocated for the protection of the water catchment special areas for more than 10 years. And that's involved many things, among which she started the Illawarra Residents for Responsible Mining and also Protect Our Water Alliance. Julie Shepherd is also here with us tonight, and she's been watching South 32's agenda for over 15 years on the Community Consultative Committee for the Dendrobium mine. I'm really looking forward to hearing Julie's response to the content of this revised plan. So welcome, Julie. And third, we're going to have Naya speak to us. She's going to cover how we got here and what the State Significant Infrastructure Declaration means for us tactically. She's the right person for the job, having studied these legal processes involved in state planning in her environmental law degree. Naya's also a member of the Illawarra Climate Coalition. And after these 10-minute presentations, I'm going to switch back to me to explain Power's call to action. And this is the what you can do part of the meeting. So please bring your ideas. As you're hearing the presenters, think about things you might want to raise in that discussion following my quick explanation of Power's call to action. Just before we turn to Kay, on the tech, I want to suggest that everyone mute yourselves now if you haven't done so already. After Kay and Julie speak, I'll give you a couple of minutes. If you've got a clarification of something that they've said that you need a bit more explanation about, that'll be the time to ask. Same with Naya, you'll get a few minutes to ask your direct questions if there's anything that you're not clear on. And then after I speak, we'll all have a discussion about where to from here. I also want to suggest for your own viewing pleasure to make your view presenter view, not gallery view. And you can do that by going to the top right-hand corner of your screen and clicking there. There's a button there you can press to change to presenter view, and then you'll get a nice big picture. What else? We're recording the meeting. I'm just letting you know that. But when we get to the discussion part, we're not going to use that recording for anything. So feel free to say whatever you like. It's not going to end up on the internet, but our talks are going to end up on the internet as a way to share the message with more people. Many of you already know about POWER. POWER is a group of everyday people organising to protect our water catchment. And we meet fortnightly, and anyone who shares POWER's goal of protecting the water catchment is very welcome to participate in POWER. And in fact, many of you do. A quick retrospective of the wonderful work we've been doing in POWER involves making the demand of no mining in our water catchment a key local demand of the climate movement. And we've had POWER speakers at almost all the climate rallies in Wollongong, and we've got a lot of media through that around this issue. There's been also a range of really interesting, fun, creative protests at South 32, at local MPs' offices, coal company AGMs, and of course at the Russell Vale mine. We have printed over 15,000 flyers in the last maybe year or two and distributed these across neighbourhoods. And that kind of work would not have been possible without the incredible groups of people, a lot of you organising in teams to go out into your neighbourhoods and letterbox your neighbours. We've held info nights and stalls. We've had a catchment convoy where we went out and looked at the legacy of mining and the damage mining does to our water catchment. And we've held forums such as the one on Green Steel, which is also available online. Loads of community events, as you may know, and of course the Independent Planning Commission submissions that many of you would have participated in at the end of 2020, which led, of course, to the Dendrobium mine proposal being rejected by the IPC. More on that in a moment. A group of people from POWER have split off to form an incorporated group that is running a legal case to try and hold up these developments. We've been involved in making films and documentaries with a range of really cool people in our area, media appearances, and we do a lot of research behind the scenes, which informs the media and also informs our campaign. A lot of that is on POWER's website. And finally, behind the scenes and also in public, we spend a lot of time learning from other campaigns and organisations and drawing those links and networks. So we are having a huge impact. And while the Dendrobium revised plan is really awful and terrible, it's not as bad as the plan that they went to the IPC with. So I really want to stress that we are actually having an impact, everyone, and I'm glad you're here tonight to think about the next steps in this fight to stop mining in our water catchment. I'm going to turn to Kay now, who's going to speak about what's in the current revised plan that Dendrobium and South 32 are bringing to the planning minister. Over to you, Kay.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I'll just share my screen and I'll try and get the right one. Can you all see that okay? Yep, great. Okay, so as Rachel mentioned, I'll talk about the new plan that Dendrobium has for extension of mining. The Independent Planning Commission almost a year ago actually refused an extension plan by Dendrobium as proposed by South 32, and it found that the proposed mine design risked long-term irreversible damage to Greater Sydney and the Illawarra's drinking water catchment. So this is what the original proposal looked like. So I'm just putting on my timer here so I don't go over. This is what the original proposal was here on the left. Here is the Cordo Dam, the Avon Dam. And we have here areas 1, 2, and 3A, which have already been mined. We have area 3B here, which is currently being mined, and area 3C, which is approved for mining, but hasn't commenced. And the original plan proposed area 5 out here in the vicinity of Avon Dam, Avon Reservoir, and area 6 up here, which is close to the Cordo Dam. Area 5, this area is, they would be mining in the Bulleye seam, and in Area 6, they were going to mine the Wongawelli seam. So this is the new proposal, and we have very limited information about the new proposal. It's mostly from the, it's from a scoping report, which has been released by South 32. And you can see that we have Area 5 here and no Area 6. So Area 6 has been removed from the new proposal. This is another view of that proposal. And you can see a few notable things. Area 6 has gone. You can see the Cordeaux Reservoir and the Avon Reservoir here. And these are where the dam walls are. And this is an setback from the dam wall, an exclusion zone of 1 kilometre from the dam walls, which is supposedly to protect the dam wall. However, in the previous proposal, Water New South Wales did specify that the setback, said that the setback should be at least 1.5 kilometres, not 1 kilometre, because the impacts of movement at the dam wall caused by the underground mining could be very severe. So in terms of detail for the new proposal, we don't have a great deal. And I just point out here, Julie Shepherd's fantastic, couple of Julie Shepherd's fantastic photos. This one of a cracked swamp, the cracking being caused by longwall mining, cracked and dried out swamp. So the footprint of the new proposal would be over 7 square kilometres of the protected special areas would be undermined. The upland swamps, which are crucial to the catchment area by holding water during when we get rain and releasing it slowly into rivers and creeks, watercourses, and of course, eventually into the dam during the dry times. There would be 15 upland swamps directly or partially above the longwalls. In terms of Indigenous cultural sites, there would be 6 sites that would be directly or partially above the longwalls that are being proposed. Cordeaux Reservoir, so we no longer have Area 6. The mining would be over 4 kilometres from the dam wall, the Cordeaux dam wall, and there would be almost 7 square kilometres, however, of surface water catchment area of the Cordeaux Reservoir and river, which would be directly undermined by the longwalls. In terms of Avon Reservoir, the distance from the dam wall that is being proposed is 1 kilometre. So it's the same as the last proposal, despite the fact that Water New South Wales advocates at least 1.5 kilometres. And surface water catchment area of Avon Reservoir and river, over 5 square kilometres would be directly undermined by longwalls. It's worth pointing out, probably you've heard this before, that Sydney is the only city in the world which allows longwall mining beneath a publicly owned water catchment. The proximity to Avon Reservoir is a particular concern for the people who are living around the Illawarra. Avon Dam is not only the 2nd largest dam in the Greater Sydney region, but it's also the only source of water supply to over 310,000 residents and businesses in the Illawarra region. There's quite a few details here. I just point out limited details. So the new proposal is proposing to mine up until December 2041. The previous project was proposing till December 2048, and the currently approved project, they've got approval to mine to 2030. They would be extracting about 31 million tonnes of run-of-mine coal within the Bulli seam. That would all be mined by 2035, they're saying, and they're saying that the additional time is to continue and complete their mining of Area 3C. There's some interesting information about the workforce. Just almost in October last year, the Department of Planning cited the workforce of Dendrobium at 400, but this latest proposal cites the current workforce at 650 people. So of course, it's always good to see more jobs in the Illawarra. It's something that we, the Illawarra has been challenged by employment opportunities on many occasions. It is pretty odd though, I think, that there has been a 61% increase in the workforce in a period of 14 months, despite the fact that South32 didn't increase its mining activity because they didn't get approval. I'll just finish with the comment that it's been frequently said that the coal is for steelmaking and that at Port Kembla Steelworks, whereas the research that Power members did shows that actually 75% of the coal is exported. About 12.5% is used to make coke, which is then exported, and about 12.5% of it is actually goes into the steel making at Port Kembla Steelworks. So coal from Dendrobium represents 18% of the Port Kembla's steelworks coal that is used to go into the steelworks in about 2019, that was the figure. So we're very fortunate tonight to have Julie Shepherd as a special guest. And so I'd like to hand over to Julie now.
Okay. Right. All right, well, contrary to what was said at the introduction, I've actually been looking at Dendrobium for over 20 years, having been involved with the Commission of Inquiry in 2001. And then I went on to the Community Consultative Committee when it first was set up in 2002. And I'd had a gutful of it by the end of 2017, and I resigned then. But unfortunately cannot divorce myself from the issues. And when I say I had a gut full of it, the photos that are on the Power website and that I use at all the presentations that I've been doing around the place are from my actual witnessing and documenting of 15, well, it was 10 years really. They didn't start production until 2005, but 10 years of destruction. It was just utter destruction, and it was so depressing to go into the catchment. We went in a few times every year, and to see that just every time there were new longwalls and new areas, there was just more damage and more damage. And it was incredibly depressing work for me, and it didn't do anything for my blood pressure. And probably today when I'm talking, I'll get angry and upset again, because it always affects me very emotionally, because unless you've seen that damage and the scale of it that I've seen and the extent of it and the sort of attitudes of the people who are doing that damage and the attitudes of the people who are approving that damage just is utterly scandalous. And when I see this, by the way, when we had the seeming victory of the refusal of areas 5 and 6, as we've had before, I always felt, okay, it seems like we've won, but there'll be a kickback, and we knew that kickback was coming, and here it is now. And what I see it as is the original application for areas 5 and 6 was an ambit claim. That's all it was. And this is the game that they play to get us all worked up about stuff and thinking that things are outrageous, which we did, because that was an absolutely outrageous application that they put in for the most intensive mining, the most aggressive mining that would have been ever seen in the catchment. And so when that was knocked back, I think all that was happening was that they've got now what they really wanted. They only really wanted Area 5, which is the Bulli Seam. They never wanted or needed the Wongawilli in Area 6, despite what they said in the application, that that was absolutely essential. And, you know, the sky would fall in and the steelworks would close if they couldn't have their blended mix of the Bulli Seam and the Wongawilli. It was bullshit, obviously, because now they're saying they don't need Area 6. And when you look at the justification for that in what's been published for this application, it's completely unconvincing when they talk about the fact that now they don't actually need it. So these are the things that make one incredibly angry and cynical. And it's a game that they're playing to make us feel like this has so much more going for it because it's not nearly as bad as the other one, therefore maybe we can wear it. Well, we're not going to wear it. We aren't going to wear it. Whether we can convince enough people who have the power to stop it that it should not be worn, well, I don't know. But this is the way I see it. The reduction in the impacts is still totally unacceptable. None of this is acceptable in our drinking water catchment, and the game that they're playing isn't acceptable either. And just a few things that stand out for me. I mean, there's so much that will come to the fore when the actual EIS comes out, all the details, but the things that stand out so far in the scoping report, I mean, they cite the IEPMC report about the fact that really there was no significant loss of water quantity or quality thus far in all the mining that's been done. So, you know, it's hunky-dory, you should be able to just keep going with it. But that sort of attitude totally disregards the equally important principal objective of Water New South Wales under their Act, which is the protection of the environment. And as I see it, the ecological integrity of the catchment, which is an intrinsic part of the hydrological integrity, is underpinned by the health of the upland swamps, which are listed both federally and at state level as EECs. And so I'm just going to flick up, if I can do this properly now, I'll share my screen and flick up that map that Kay put up at the beginning. It makes an absolute joke of what these are the things that they're purporting to do to save, to protect the environment. So on this map, you've got these little white dots. And what they are where they're saying they're going to protect significant stream features. Well, doesn't that sound lovely? You're going to protect significant stream features. Now, what that means is they're actually going to mine around that because, or in the first one, they were going to mine around it, but now they're actually just stopping the longwalls here because there are fewer longwalls now than in the first application. But they're still going to protect those significant stream features somehow, which means they probably won't allow them to fall apart. You know, they're not going to allow them to be busted up and lose all their water. But what they're still doing is they're undermining the feeder swamps of those streams. So the streams, those first order streams, the first and second order streams, which are the headwaters along with the swamps of the whole river system, are as equally as important as the third, fourth and fifth order streams that they're also saying they're not going to undermine. You know, these are the headwaters. If you undermine those headwater swamps, there will be no water going down those streams. It will be a dry riverbed. And we've seen this time and time again with every swamp that's been undermined, and there have been about 30 swamps already undermined in the previous mined areas here. All these green bits have been undermined, these swamps. Every swamp has lost its water and lost its outlet stream. Those outlet streams are now bone dry. I've seen those outlet streams before they were undermined, they were crystal clear, water that you could drink, beautiful water coming out of those swamps that had sat there maybe for months and months after rain, being held and slowly released to create the base flow of those rivers. That base flow is just cut off once you don't have the swamps acting like that, and they're bedrock is busted and the water just goes through them, it's not held. So the fact that they're saying that they're going to do that, this is all part of the sham. The thing is a total sham. And enough people in politics who don't understand this stuff will think it's all okay. And enough people out there who are working in the industry will think it's okay, because they probably haven't seen it either. The guys who work the mines, they're down under the ground. They're not seeing this sort of damage. So I'll just move on. Another thing that I picked up was the fact that they say there's going to be a 60% reduction in surface water losses. Now, these losses that were already predicted in areas 5 and 6, and it was one of the reasons that it was knocked back, they were predicted to be huge. So they're still going to be unacceptable in a drinking water catchment anyway. There's also a completely unconvincing rationale in the economic assessment about the need for Area 5. Now, when there's actually a hell of a lot of bullite seam coal available in their other mines. And I'll just, I'll have to get my other map up now. Can I get my other map up now? This one. Now this shows you this is the bullite seam project that was approved in 2010 and surrounding the Appin mine. And at the moment,
I don't think we've swapped over to your other map.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
I've got it up here on my screen.
Yeah, you might want to, someone else might know a better way, but you might want to unshare your screen and then share it again and
stop
share
sharing.
That particular one.
And also we're at 10 minutes, Julie, just so you know.
Oh, damn. Share screen.
And then choose the one you want to share.
Does it come up?
Yep, that's it.
Okay, so this is the bullite seam. They're out here now. This was approved in 2010. They're mining all around here. This is the exploration area that they're currently looking at now, and this is actually where I live. And I've always said I'd be happier to be undermined rather than have the catchment area undermined. As far as I'm concerned, the catchment area is more important than these areas here. I don't think the damage would be as great. Not that I want to be undermined or I think any of these areas should be undermined, but the point I'm making is that all this is still this is part of their mining leases, and they still have all this bullite seam coal out here. This is the same company. It's just easier for them to get it from Dendrobium because it's closer to the port, and they will resist. They'll be coming kicking and screaming to be made just use this and not have Dendrobium. So their arguments are crap, and I could cite other examples of this as well, but that's probably about enough from me. Probably enough my blood pressure can take too. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. We've had a question from Kath in the chat, which Kath, if you want to unmute and ask your question, we'll just take a few. If you've got clarification points or things that you didn't quite understand about what Kay or Julie have explained, now's the time to put your hand up or just jump in, but we'll start with Kath. And if anyone else wants to ask a question.
Thanks, Rascal. Thanks, Julie and Kay, for working through the scoping study and presenting tonight. Julie, just quickly on that, was that you were saying they've got plenty of coal in other areas? Is that the Appin mine that you're talking about?
That's exactly right.
And my question was, before 2005, was it 2005 when longwalling commenced, and before that was it Borden Pillar?
No. Borden Pillar mine, longwalling's been done in the Southern Coalfield since the 1970s.
Okay.
When I said 2005, that was when production began at Dendrobium. It was approved in 2001. They took till 2005 for the construction period, and then they started actually producing coal in 2005.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Naya, if you wanted to start sharing screen while anyone else plucks up the courage to ask a question, if you've got one, you can put it in the chat as well if you like, and I'll read it out for you. Otherwise, we'll switch to Naya. Thank you, Kay and Julie. It was really a great summary.
Yeah, so as long as
can I just ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Just about the coal from Appin, Julie, that gets transported by road, does it?
It does, yes.
Completely. And it comes which way?
Down Mount Ousley.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, not down Ousley, down the Appenbullai Road.
Yeah, but after that, it comes down Mount Ousley Road, right?
I don't think it does go down Mount Ousley. I think it goes down because the mine is on the Appenbullai Road, so it comes out there and goes down the coast that way.
But that has to be down Mount Ousley Road because it can't go down the Bulleye Pass.
Well, I don't know how they do it, but they come out. Yeah. How would they do that?
I don't know.
But I know the trucks come out of the mine on the Appenbullai Road and turn down to the coast. They go east. So
well, then that means they must come down what gets called the M1 or something. I think, you know, Mount Ousley Road.
Yeah, I think it must be Mount Ousley Road, Anne.
Yeah.
And then to the port through there, down Masters Road, or
yeah.
Fiona's asking a really great question that I think would be good to come back to in the discussion. But Jacob is asking a question about the specific impacts of coal mining on the catchment, which is a big topic. I don't know if Julie Kay, do you want to just list off in just headings for us?
Do you want to take
well,
that?
there are impacts that I was going to talk about. I could have talked about tonight. Look, even already in Area 5, there will have been impacts in Area 5 and 6, but especially in Area 5. They will already have done all the exploration phase, and that involves roads going in. It involves people going in. It involves seismic testing to actually to send a pulse down to the seams and see what's down there. It involves boreholes. It involves a hell of a lot of traffic in and out just to do the exploration phase. So, you know, that's surface impacts. Then once you start mining, then there's all the subsidence impacts. Also, the other surface impacts which will happen is having to put in the infrastructure like for the vent shaft. There's a vent shaft going in for Area 5. The further away the mining is from the pit top, you have to put in vent shafts to suck in clean air and expel the bad air. And that's a huge operation. They have to put in electricity transmission lines to power those vent shafts. All that has to happen. It's a lot of, it's like Pitt Street out there with all this traffic backwards and forth. This is in the middle of the catchment area. So there's a lot of stuff, and before the mining even starts, you know, once the mining starts and you've got the subsidence impacts, the first things to show the impacts, as I said, will be the swamps. And if they undermine the streams, but they're saying they're not going to underline third, fourth or fifth order streams, but those are first and second order streams and the swamps themselves, well then, you know, you just get the subsidence causes the cracking of the base of the swamp, causes the cracking of the base of the streams, water goes subsurface, may appear further downstream. When it does appear, it's in a hugely polluted state, usually bright red or yellow or orange, can be greeny colour, and that sort of impact can last decades. We've seen examples of it in the catchment where mining 30 years ago has caused that sort of impact with the water going subsurface, reappearing polluted, and it's still occurring. So the long-standing impacts. You get gas venting. Yeah, there's just so many things. I don't know. I do a whole presentation on this, and there's a lot of stuff on Power's website too.
May I also add that there are hundreds of cultural sites up there that are damaged by mining.
That's right. That's another thing.
Phil's got his hand up. Phil, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
G'day, everybody. Yeah, g'day, Julie. Nice to see you again.
Who's this? Sorry?
Phil Diamond here. From the
Phil. Hi.
How you going?
I can't see you.
Oh, right. Okay. Look, I've just come from a meeting with the mine. We have a special working group that has just started meeting again every second month. And on the other alternate months, we have our normal DCCC meetings. So as a committee member, we have these working group meetings that are reserved for predominantly what the future is of Dendrobium and looking at getting into areas 5 and, well, not 6 now, but certainly 5. I've walked the swamps with Julie and other people. There's extreme damage up there. It's not something that Blind Freddy would ever sort of dismiss, because you'd be tripping over cracks in the rocks and all that sort of stuff. A lot of the issues that have been brought up by Power and Water New South Wales I've raised in those meetings as well. And my perception is that when they put the submission in for the extension, they were pretty arrogant about it. I think that they were pretty cocksure that they were going to get it ticked off and to go ahead. I think at the beginning of this, last year, sorry, when the IPC turned it over, I think they were quite humiliated and a bit shocked by the decision. But those issues that Julie's been talking about in regards to the proximity to Avon Dam and all those sort of stuff still remain. The long walls are still going to be 305 metres wide, which I find preposterous because of the damage that's also, you know, quite evident over 15 years of mining there already. And so I think that the other thing that really sort of churned me up, and a few other people on the committee, was the process of making it a state significant infrastructure project, because we found that to be an abuse of the decision-making power in this state, in that the IPC was set up to be at arm's length from politicians, and they've drawn the politicians back right into the fold and been fluffing their nest. So
can I just interrupt you to say, Naya's about to speak about this. So if you've got a specific question, can you head there? If not, can we come back to you in the discussion?
Yeah. Sorry. So they're just points I want to sort of
thank you.
Clarify about what Julie's saying. Is it?
Thank you. Please hold on for the discussion at the end, and we'll come back and talk about these issues all together in a bit more detail. Let's just get ourselves all on the same page with Naya explaining what this decision to call Dendrobium state significant infrastructure means and how did we get here. Thanks, Naya.
Okay, so everyone can see the orange state significant infrastructure. We can all see that, all good?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect, thanks guys. Yeah, so basically what I'm going to be talking about is what this big name means, state significant infrastructure, and how it's going to impact the decision-making process and how we interact with it at the Dendrobium mine. So first of all, I just wanted to make the clarification that even though they're named so similarly, state significant development and state significant infrastructure are both different things, and it can get very confusing because it's a very similar name, I know. So under New South Wales planning law, just for a bit of background, all developments go through some sort of approval process, depending on how big and complicated they are. So a small project like a fence or a house extension might be approved by your local council, whereas larger ones will go to the state government or an independent body. So state significant development and state significant infrastructure are examples of two categories of development that are treated slightly differently under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act and subsequent regulations that go underneath that. So any text that's in blue, any little numbers, section numbers from this act, you totally don't need to know them, but it's just in case people are interested to know where these processes or rules or classifications are coming from. So just for interest, don't worry about them. So basically, where does Dendrobium fit? State significant development versus infrastructure. So the last application or development application made for expansion at Dendrobium was state significant development. And this is basically because all mining projects categorically go into state significant development because they're designated so by a particular state environmental planning policy, so a regulation under the EP&A Act. So this new application to expand the mine is different, not only because of the differences in what's being proposed that Kay and Julie just talked about, but also because it has been declared state significant infrastructure. And this decision actually followed a motion on the issue in state parliament that was moved by One Nation and was supported by the Liberals, the Nationals, the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers Party, the Christian Democrats and the Labor Party. So essentially what the minister had to do to make it state significant infrastructure as opposed to development was amend a schedule of the State Environmental Planning Policy Regional Development, the one that's on your screens right now, hopefully, to expressly include the mine as state significant infrastructure. So essentially, the main change that it makes is who makes the decision, basically. So you might remember in our previous campaigns to do with Dendrobium Mine, you got to write letters or even speak at a public hearing. That is because state significant development applications that are lodged by private developers like South32 are decided by the Independent Planning Commission if they meet certain criteria. So in the case of South32, like there were more than 50 unique objections to the proposed development. So it got an Independent Planning Commission. So you could probably remember seeing some of these photos if you were following any of what Power was doing at that time. So this Independent Planning Commission is a body that's completely disconnected from other government parties or bodies, including being disconnected from the Department of Planning and Industry and Environment. So it's essentially trying to really make sure that there's no other interests being involved in making this decision and that it's purely based on facts of the situation. Now, because it has been declared state significant infrastructure, the decision-making basically goes entirely into the hands of the New South Wales Minister for Planning. At the moment, it's Anthony Roberts, I believe. So this means no public hearing and circumvents the thorough and independent investigation of the Independent Planning Commission that found that the previous development application was not going to be in public interest. Yep, so no more public hearing, basically much less independence. So the Planning Department even previously recommended that the Independent Planning Commission approved the previous application for development at Dendrobium. And now the Planning Minister has essentially given himself or his department the power to decide on this project. By removing the independent oversight, the state government really calls into question the role of the IPC, kind of goes behind its back. And it really suggests a capture of the state government and most New South Wales political parties by the coal companies, as shown by that motion that went through Parliament that was supported by so many parties across the bench. So considering all this, it's pretty absurd for the minister and the department to claim that they're going to be able to give a balanced and fact-based assessment of this project when they previously really strongly backed the flawed claims that were made by South32 in their previous proposal, which were then rejected by the Independent Planning Commission in their previous assessment of that mine expansion. So now we get to consider what their reasons that they told us were behind their decision. So the main reason that they gave was that the mine would provide essential metallurgical coal for local steel production in New South Wales. In particular, they were claiming that Port Kembla was not going to be able to function without the coal from this mine. And whilst the Independent Planning Commission's report and decision stated that the economic value of the water supply catchment and the costs of Scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions was an equally important consideration as the coal and steel industry. In their statement regarding the state significant infrastructure declaration, the government made no mention of water supply, environmental, or emissions concerns. So that really just gives you an idea of where they're coming from and what they're valuing more. Yeah, so to make that look even more dodgy, the Independent Planning Commission saw things very differently from what the government seems to be seeing them now. So in their investigation and report, the Independent Planning Commission found that most of BlueScope's coal came from other mines. Most of Dendrobium's coal over the next 20 years is going to be exported elsewhere, either elsewhere in Australia or overseas, and that BlueScope's preferred coal was not going to be mined by the expansion until almost 20 years into the previous project that was proposed. So clearly some things just aren't really adding up here in terms of what they're claiming and why they needed to make it this state significant infrastructure. Another big thing is that a mining project has never been declared state significant infrastructure before. Usually state significant infrastructure declarations are only used for major public infrastructure projects. So think hospitals, roads, power, and water supplies, things like that. And this fact is even more damning when you again go back and consider the political context of the mine. So the Independent Planning Commission's decision in 2020 was immediately condemned by South32, the owner of Dendrobium, and criticised by prominent members of the New South Wales government like John Barilaro, who all vowed to overturn it. So South32 and the New South Wales Mineral Councils furthermore have been lobbying the government for months now to overturn the Commission's decision. And in early December, New South Wales Deputy Premier Paul Toole and Planning Minister Rob Stokes announced that they were pushing forward with Dendrobium's expansion. So just think about where everyone is placed on this issue, and then consider now that the decision of whether to approve this mine or not is in the hands of one man, the Planning Minister. But the main thing is not to despair. So there's still going to be opportunity for public comment on the proposal, which Rascal is going to be talking about later. And the minister has to take into account these submissions when making their decision. So here are some sections in the Act. So when the environmental impact statement is placed on public exhibition, which it has to be, any person or public authority can comment on it. And if all else fails, there may be opportunity for judicial review. So it's important when people hear review, they think, oh, so they'll overturn the decision because they made the wrong decision. So it's really an annoying concept, but actually judicial review is different to that. So a judicial review is questioning whether the minister would have made the decision legally. So they followed all the right steps that they had to under the Act, and not whether it was a correct decision. So usually this really narrows down the scope for review of the decision, even if we really hate the outcome. So for example, Novak Djokovic's case came down today. This is a really good example of judicial review because it's about whether the official who revoked his visa had the power to do that, not whether it was the right decision or not, or whether we like the decision or not. So there will be opportunity, there may be opportunity for judicial review, but it's important to keep in mind what that really means. Yeah, so that is my kind of presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can put your hand up and I'll ask you to unmute whenever you're ready.
Annie's popped a question in the chat for you now. I don't know if Annie, did you want to unmute and ask your question? Or I will read it for Naya.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Yeah.
Okay. Naya, it's lovely to see you there. I'm just wondering if what this SSI classification for Dendrobium means for future mining proposals in New South Wales?
Yep. So basically it doesn't really, like legally, it doesn't have like precedent setting value, but there are no real guidelines as to how, or steps to go through as to what steps to go through to classify something as state significant infrastructure. So I think if anything, it just shows a willingness for the current government to use a category of infrastructure that is very broad for something that it's not really intended to be used for. So like I was talking about, it's mainly used for things that really need to be done. So hospitals, roads, water, power, it's kind of public infrastructure projects. So I hope it doesn't mean that they're just going to be giving all mines this status, and I don't think it will. It's just because, I think it's because they really felt the pressure, the public pressure last time on this project, and they know that there'll be public pressure on any new information that comes out for a new application to do with this project. So they're trying to make it easier for themselves to circumvent that public input. Yeah.
Can I just add to question what you're saying, because it seems to me that most politicians, except for the Greens and one independent, supported this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty dire.
It is pretty dire. And yeah, so like I was saying before, it really points to the fact that most of our government officials seem to have their hands pretty deep in the pockets of coal companies or fossil fuel companies. And now with COP26 and the growing public movement, they're really feeling the pressure to try and come up with new ways to be able to keep acting the way they've been acting for so long. So in some ways, I find that to be a success, even though it's very frustrating, the outcome.
No, and Kate, Joanna's got a question in the chat. It might be one for Kate to respond to. Is it possible for the EIS to cover all of the IPC reasons for refusal?
It's a very good question, Joanna, and I've been trying to understand myself what the EIS will be required to cover. The Secretary has released the SEARS, which is the Secretary's Environmental Assessment Requirements, and they are on the website. They seem fairly broad though, and I am going through the scoping report, and there appears to be some things that were raised in the last IPC and in the IPC report that they are needing to address. And one of those is the bushfire issue. So you may recall that there's been a lot of concern, particularly as we had the terrible drought and bushfires a couple of years ago. There's a lot of concern about how the dewatering of the land and the swamps up on the Illawarra Plateau is going to make the area more prone to bushfire risk. I mean, it's just a logical outcome, you know. However, unfortunately, there's very limited research on this. There is a bit of research that's happened in relation to longwall mining in the Blue Mountains, but you know, there doesn't appear to be any research here you know, about the impacts of longwall mining on bushfire proneness in the Illawarra Plateau. So hopefully there will be things that will be addressed in a new EIS, which were raised in the IPC. Yeah, but I'm not 100% sure to what extent.
Stephen is asking, can the Minister place further restrictions on a proposal before approving it? I think that's one for you, Naya.
Yeah, so when they're giving their approvals, any approval body can place restrictions on proposals in order for it to be approved. Those restrictions just have to be considered like reasonable. So yes, the Minister can place restrictions on the proposal before they choose to approve it. That's completely up to them. And that's something that probably our public campaigning is most likely to have an influence on, is those restrictions and reporting requirements that are put on the approval of the proposal.
Kat's question about the SEARS, I don't know if we haven't totally addressed that. Is there an opportunity to comment on the SEARS to request broader grounds assessment?
That's not really, I'm going to have to bow out of that one. I'm not really sure.
The SEARS are set and have been published. What we are going to be recommending, though, is that people actually write to the department, to the Minister, and specify and ask for things that they really think should be addressed in the EIS. I think that when the proposal was changed to when the refusal of dendrobium mine was politicised, and then the new project was named SSI, to be honest, there wasn't a lot of noise about it. And I think that that's because no one believed really that the New South Wales government would sink that low. It is such an affront to our democracy. And it just shows how sick and compromised our democracy is, and the New South Wales government and the federal government. And so, you know, what we think is, but yeah, no one believed they would sink that low. So I think that it's really important that people who are concerned now write to the minister, write to the department, and you know, their local members, and actually you know, ask for, well, what about this? What about this? And ask for things to be covered in the EAS.
Thanks, Kay. That's a really great segue to the next part of our conversation tonight. We'll come back to some of the great questions in the chat in a moment that are about the more broader strategy of the campaign. But for now, let me walk you through what Power's suggesting, our call to action, and see what you think. The first point is the really obvious one. We all do it already, but we could all do it more. We can let our friends and neighbours and workmates know that there's mining in our water catchment. People really often don't know this basic fact. Second, we're asking everyone to contact the Minister's Office, the Planning Minister, and local MPs about the new dendrobium review process, and ask questions and demand answers. Third, we're asking everyone to write a submission when the time comes to the Minister for Planning about the revised expansion proposal for dendrobium. And we want everyone to be thinking about and planning and coming along to protests. So let me talk you through each of those points. Firstly, you know this info already. You have a pretty good handle, I'm sure, on the problems with mining in the water catchment. Now's the time to start sharing posts with your friends, raising these issues in conversation with people at the local shop, at the local cafe, in your workplace. Invite your friends to join and follow Power's socials, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're on all of them. And if you want to help out with posting things to them, get in touch with us. We'd love more support and help and activity there. If you haven't already, sign up to Power's monthly email updates. You can do that via the website, or you can pop in the chat now if you'd like us to add you to our monthly email. You can leaflet your neighbourhood and local businesses. This is something that wonderful people in Power have been coordinating for quite a while. We've mapped our area and we've had teams go out in different neighbourhoods. We can link you up and introduce you to people so you don't have to do it alone. But at this time with COVID, it's actually a really great time to walk around your neighbourhood and put things in people's letterboxes. Another suggestion is to contact community organisations that you're involved with. They don't have to be political. In fact, it's better if they're not. Local community groups, school groups, PNCs, sports clubs and associations. If you've got a connection, it's a really great way to open the conversation and ask them what they think and whether they'd like to join the campaign. The second point, we're asking everyone to hassle the Minister and local MPs. On the screen there, I've given the number for Anthony Roberts, the new New South Wales Planning Minister's Office number. And we're suggesting that we all tomorrow call this number and request to leave a message for the Minister. You introduce yourself, you tell the staff what you're calling about, make sure you use the keywords, dendrobium, state significant infrastructure, and you tell them what you think. We've got a lot of questions that Power would like to know the answers to, and we've shared them with you all on our website. So if you want something to riff off, go to the website and bring up those questions. And when you call up, you're likely to get an office staffer who's going to be a bit flustered and be like, why are you calling? Just introduce yourself and let them know, and try and keep them on the line. It's a way to be a bit disruptive and add a little bit of pressure. The other thing you can do right away, you can do it right now, is go to the Minister's Office web form. I've put a tiny URL on the screen, but if you go to their website, it's not too difficult to get to. I'll post the link on the Power page after this meeting. And that web form allows you to leave a general message or inquiry. Again, with this, it is very important that you use keywords, put dendrobium in the title of your inquiry, and then ask your questions, say what you think, say whatever you like. The point is at this stage to just be adding pressure and showing them that we're watching. Third thing is that Power is going to notify everyone on all of our socials and our emails and our website when the Department of Planning puts that environmental impact statement online. From then, we're going to have 28 days to send in our submissions. We'll publish a submissions guide on the Power website as soon as that environmental impact statement is released. And so everyone will be able to draw from that and use parts of it at your will. What you can do right away, though, while we're waiting for this EIS to be released, is that you can contact local groups and organisations and ask them if they'd be willing to make a submission. It doesn't have to be long. It can be as short or as long. It can be as expert or as amateur as you want to make it. This is the current website. There's a placeholder there for the Dendrobium Mine Extension. And you'll see when the EIS comes on exhibition, it's going to be here on this page. So from there, you can navigate to lodge your submission when the time comes. And again, we will make sure you all know when that time comes. And finally, I want us to talk tonight a little bit about possible targets, locations, colourful, creative ideas that you might have for protests around this issue. So you'll all be aware that at the moment we are really facing, mining happening right now at the Russell Vale mine. And many of you will have been watching the different actions that have been happening about the Russell Vale expansion. Get involved in them. And obviously when the Dendrobium stuff kicks off, we'll be taking similar actions. So you can follow the Stop Russell Vale Mine page on Facebook if you want to get involved in that campaign. It's all about stopping mining in our water catchment. So what do people think? Are you up for hassling the local MPs and the minister about this issue right away? And are you keen to write a submission when the time comes? Sid, well, if you'd like to unmute, I see your hands up. I'm just going to transition us into a discussion at this point. So if you want to speak, raise your hand or pop a thing in the chat or just unmute and go ahead, and I'll try and make sure everyone gets a go.